Hi, thank you for turning into Building Digital Product podcast. Join us in exploring the latest digital innovations in the world of tech industry, where we speak about the technologies that can boost your business here and now. And today we have a pleasure of welcoming Alicia Navarro, the founder and CEO of Skimlinks and Flown, and passionate and successful entrepreneur and advocate for diversity and inclusion in tech industry. Welcome, Alicia. Today we are going to speak a little bit about your experience and knowledge in hiring and cooperation, and about your products Skimlinks and Flown, about their ideation, and my favorite part, about women in tech. I would like to start asking some questions about the way you as CEO and founder is searching for the appropriate team for the project. I want to pay attention to some key principles when it comes to hiring project teams. So what are the essential qualities you look for in potential team members?
I think that before you start hiring of any sort, you need to be clear on what your cultural values are. I'm a massive believer in, a really clearly defined set of cultural values. And only once you have those understood can you then begin bringing people on. So, and it's really interesting because people think it has to all be the same, but I've now had two different companies that have had very, very different cultural values. They're still great places to work. Everyone's very nice, but they're not cultural values. Cultural values are around how you approach problem solving, how you approach rewarding or incentivizing people. What kind of behaviors do you want people to be doing when no one's looking? So first work out what kind of culture, and that will be a product of the kind of environment you're working in. Are you a remote team or an in-person team? How do you want decision-making to be done? And then you can begin looking at the right kinds of people to join your team. And you design interview questions that either directly or indirectly seek to give you clarity as to whether they're a good cultural fit.
I know that you once joined forces with the Romanian developers, quite a distance from Australia. So here at LinkUp Studio, we similarly work with clients all across the world, in the USA, Europe, and the Middle East. So could you share your perspective on working with the remote team?
Yeah, so there's a remote team and there's a remote sort of external team. At the moment now with my current company, Flown, we are a remote team, but we are all employees. So there's a remote team and then there's, I guess, an outsourced engineering team that you work with for various reasons. So with my first Skimlinks, yes, I began with a Romanian engineering team. At the time, I think the benefits of those kinds of arrangements is that they are very flexible, very experienced at building sort of proof of concepts or early MVPs. So we're able to operate at both a speed and price that enables you to work out if you have a business, And I think that for first-time founders or not even first time, but for many people who would just want to get something up and running without the commitment or risk that hiring someone full-time gives you, then an offshore team can be a fantastic way to get started. We then at Skim, and I was there for 11 years, and at the end we also worked with a offshore. And for very different reasons. We were a big company, we were profitable, but at that stage we needed to quickly onboard a team that we knew could work well together, that were able to solve a very specific problem or take responsibility for a very specific part of our business. And so in both of those cases, it worked. I think that it probably should not. Like the only thing you have for the duration of your company, but again, it depends on the kind of company that you are. If you're a venture-backed company with investors, very often they're looking for you to have employed teams of developers, and that becomes an important criteria for getting external investors. If instead you're not looking at a VC-backed company and instead you're looking to, run a business, whether it be a lifestyle business or spin up a product or run, a business that you have put the money in for yourself, an offshore team is a flexible, often more cost-effective way to get up and running and to run things over time easier than it would be with an employed team.
So to recap, if I understood correctly, if for the beginning, it's okay to start working with remote teams, but then to have the in-house team to work in person, it would be better and more productive, right?
Yes, because you're then able to craft a culture that is necessary for getting through the hard phase. I think that, that, and again, it really depends on the kind of company you are. I say within my own experience, which is venture-backed companies. And so generally, a venture-backed tech company will need to have its own team, but there is a place for offshore teams at the beginning when you're getting started, and as a supplementary addition to the team when you need to scale or you need certain projects done as a one-off or short-term basis.
Just recently, we also released a video on assembling the right team for a startup project. And we'd love to hear about where did you look when building your team? I mean, could you share some specific platforms or communities where you found talent?
Yeah, where did we find talent? Good question. So, time round, it's largely people I had worked with before. After you've been in the industry a while, you get the opportunity to work with lots of different people, and a lot of people that I work with now are people I knew or friends of people I know. But then beyond that, I advertise often through networks. I like to hire people that come through referrals, generally because there's extra element of trust that comes with that. Mm-hmm. But we advertise, and I guess the platforms that we have used to quite a lot of success has been LinkedIn, again, because LinkedIn tells you sort of people. And I think a reasonably good job board. Mm-hmm. And then we've also used more specific startup-related job boards, which I forgot the names of now, but there's a couple of specific startup-related job boards that have been very useful for engineering and non-engineering talent.
Great, very insightful. Thank you so much. Yeah, right now, I have also noticed that some of the biggest and most profitable projects that come to us are from referrals, and LinkedIn is still a good network for us also to find clients and customers. Moving forward, let's talk a little bit about Skimlinks, your first and very, I would say, very good and big company that is quite successful. So in blog once you mentioned that in 2007 you were working and pitching a social shopping platform, and you were pitching almost every day, but it didn't get any funding. And then you made a big decision to give up and switch to content monetization platform. And this became actually Skimlinks. So your success came just before the big financial crisis and recession in 2008. And as you said, you were saved from the jaws of the death. My question is, when do you think one should stop trusting their gut feeling and stop pushing a project if it's not working out?
I could give you an answer, but there's no one to this. It's an art. It's an art people get even if they're good at it. And I think I often say that one of the being a founder is you have to be both the person has the most belief in what you are doing and will be the one that's there to the end, but also you have to be the first to realize when it's time to stop or change. And to be both of those things is such a contradiction. And there's no way to do it. I think that all you can do is approach these situations with humility and try not to your own personal identity with the identity of your startup. And that can be very hard because as first-time founders, they are their startup. They are, I and it become the same pronoun. So it can be very difficult to accept defeat because that means you failed. And the only thing I can counsel other founders with is it's necessary to separate out who you are with who or what your company is. And you are not you are a success really if you're able to recognize that you need to change your strategy or that it might not be working. But it's hard. And it can be hard to separate your identity from the identity of your startup. And that can be very damaging because you feel that the failure of your startup is the same as a failure of yourself. And that's very normal. That's a very normal feeling, but it's not a healthy one, and one that, you can reduce burnout if you separate the two out. But it's very difficult because the truth of it is, if your business fails, probably you've lost some of your time, some of your money, your employees lose their jobs, your investors lose their money, and that's just an incredible amount of pressure. And yet, that is your job, to be the first to realize when it is time.
But what is the recipe of do not smashing it all together? But what is the recipe of thinking like, okay, this is my startup, it's just a business, and this is my personality, it's not a personal fail. Do you have any recipe how to separate this?
My advice for this is usually, or the recipe for this is usually to not let yourself be isolated and to surround yourself with others going through a similar journey. Because and to be honest, to have real conversations, not just about how great you're doing when actually you might not be feeling that way, but to have friendships with other people in the industry that you can say, oh, this, and then they'll say, yes, it's happening to me too. And then you can start to see that there is a difference between you and your company, and that it's a healthy separation to maintain.
Thank you for sharing it. Moving forward, once Skimlinks was acquired, reports indicate that tech mergers and acquisitions fell by 9% in 2020, partly due to the lockdown. So yet, despite these challenges, some significant deals occurred, and Skimlinks being one of them. In fact, TechCrunch reported that Skimlinks was acquired for approximately $75 million. So could you share with us how you managed to navigate this challenge period, and successfully complete the acquisition despite different obstacles like lockdown?
So it's important to note that I was no longer the CEO at that time. I had stepped down from my the CEO 2 years before that. I was still president and I was still on the board, but I'm no longer involved on a day-to-day basis with the company. So I obviously was involved in the acquisition from the perspective of board member and founder, but it was my CEO that navigated getting offers on the table and completing that sale. But and it was, it had not been our first time in a similar situation. I had navigated, any success company will have many opportunities where people try to buy you. So it was not the first time I'd experienced, but it was certainly the one that we saw through to the end. And it was a crazy time. I mean, there's no way to describe it. You're suddenly getting offers to buy your company and, experience a material amount of wealth. But at the same time, inside your house, and you're scared of what the future is going to be because there's nothing else like that. And I don't think any of us have ever experienced, nor will ever experience again, what that was like.
Yes.
And so navigating that process was just a whole other level of crazy. And we did the best we could with the information that we had. We were both, a lot of us were scared that it was not a good time to sell, and also scared that it might be the only time we get to sell. So there was a lot of trying to just make the best decisions that we could. It was a process that was easy to do remotely. That wasn't the problem. The problem was more navigating whether it was a good time to complete the sale or not.
And I think that during the lockdown, this is the time where the flown idea has created, right? It was, I just wanted to say a couple of words. The flown is designed for focused and deep work. I know that some maybe ideation process right now differs from what you have now. So what was the initial idea of flown, and how did you evolve into the product that we see today?
No, I'm a really big believer in you don't really need to know what the product will be when you start.
Right.
You know, I think that now with where I've ended up is very, very different to how it started. But you begin with a problem. You begin with an idea, and you, as I said before, you have to approach it with low amounts of ego, you know, with a lot of humility. This is the best I can think, but really it's only until you start, you're in it and you're selling it and you're building it and you're promoting it that you really learn what works and what doesn't, what people like, what they don't like. And a good leader, a good person will listen, go, okay, tweak, let's tweak. Listen, okay, tweak. Oh, that's interesting. But it's, my vision is this, and I have conviction around that. So I'm not gonna follow that right now. And there's no recipe for this other than listening to as many people as you can, developing, as you said earlier, a gut instinct about the market, about the customer, about why they use it, and then seeing where you end up, because oftentimes where you end up is a place that you could never have started from, because you would never have understood the problem enough to begin with that. And so you're right, I did both times. So Skimlinks began as a social shopping site like Pinterest and became a B2B content monetization companies, which is, you know, totally different. And then with Flown, it began as like an B for places you can work from, and it's become sort of a Twitch for work, line focus platform. So in both cases, they're solving the same underlying problem, but how they do it is a product learned.
Great. This is very insightful way. So you can just start with one idea, and then it turns out that you are developing something not completely, but in some ways different. And moving to my favorite part and the last part of the podcast, Women in Tech. You, as a founder and CEO, can share some valuable insights, I think, about this. Tech industry is often characterized by its notable gender gap. It's not secret that there are fewer women and men in the integral tech roles. According to research, women take 25% of workers in the technology sector, and this is significantly worse at the executive level because women hold only 11% of the leadership roles. So from your point of view, what are some of the biggest challenges that women face in tech industry today?
So it's an interesting question, because I think you have to ask yourself if you believe that a 50-50 balance is both the goal, and is some sort of inherent discrimination the reason that it is not equal. So is that true? I don't know if it is. That has not been my experience of it. I think that, and again, this is just my personal view, but I do not believe that the reason that there are fewer women in leadership and in tech is symptomatic of any sort of significant sexism, structural issues with the industry. My sense is that it is more a result of choice, particularly around that women want. And I see that for myself and amongst all my other feet. The truth of it is that it is very, very difficult to be a founder with all the stress and the time that it comes with, and also be a present mother or partner. It's possible, and you may be able to have a situation where your partner is able and willing to take on more of the family responsibilities, or you might be financially secure enough that you can bring on full-time help. But many women, many couples don't want that and want at a certain stage in life. And is that sexism? Is that a structural issue, or is that just a consequence of biology? These are wonderful philosophical topics, but my sense is that there are very few things that are stopping women from senior positions or any kind of position in tech other than their desire to do so. I'm curious, what do you experience that? I mean, I love discussion with other women, but my experience is that any woman that wants it, having women in tech, they like having women in leadership positions. There are generally fewer that want it because of the cost on their life, their opportunities for family, and the stress. Like, it's an extraordinary amount of stress, and it's just not for everyone.
So do you believe that men are more stress resistant than women?
No, but I do think that more women are worried about high levels of stress if they're trying to get pregnant or are pregnant.
Yeah.
There is a lot of evidence to suggest that high level stress can make it difficult to conceive, and that if you're pregnant, it's very difficult. You don't want to be stressed. It makes the pregnancy experience difficult. Then when you're the mother newborn, if you've got breastfeeding and you want to be part of it, you're out for a year or two. I would have loved to have found a partner that wanted to be a full-time carer of my children. Also, a lot of men don't want that. They to work as well. And so if you want a family, often that means someone's got to give. And
yes,
biologically, so I don't think I think that women can have this amount of stress. It's just that if they also want family, it can be hard to do both safely and healthily.
Sometimes I've heard such thoughts that women are not technically inclined because men are better and some technical stuff. So do you think this is a myth, or have you ever experienced such point of view or such approach in your business?
I think that there's a definite cultural angle to this, because I think if we saw little girls, for example, that love doing crossword puzzles or logic puzzles, would have said to them, you love doing logic puzzles, you're going to be an engineer or a coder. But we don't often, we say that to little boys perhaps, but not to little girls. So I think that there is a cultural element to it where we don't encourage certain professions in women that exhibit interest in logic, in maths and so on. So that's something that I think we're doing a lot as a society, I think, now to rectify that, to really show that technical roles and jobs are really fun and fulfilling opportunities for people of all genders. There's great women in STEM. There's just a lot more awareness of technical professions as a really exciting and compelling career ambition for women and men. And so I think that that's been a really positive factor. Cultural elements that are not encouraging young girls that show technical abilities to go on a tech. I think a lot of the reason that there are historically been a lot more men in technical professions is it's just been a career that has been encouraged. So I think there's a very strong cultural element to it. And I'm very curious to see the last 10 years or so of really deliberate programs to encourage young girls to do tech or STEM related professions has made it. When I was at university and did computer science, it was probably about 10% that were women. And I don't know, actually, I'm curious what the numbers are now as a result of it, because it could be more work that we are doing to encourage women into tech. And if they have not become more equal, maybe there is something else there. I doubt it's about proficiency, but it may be due to interest levels. But I don't know.
And I think that from my perspective, also I've noticed that key challenges women face include biases on hiring and promotions as well. Have you ever experienced like this?
I haven't. And again, you have to also take everything I say with a grain of salt. When I talk to other women that in my industry, I think I don't think so, but I think there clearly are some biases that are there, and perhaps there are certain industries that are more so than others. My experience of the tech industry particularly is that it's more welcoming of women than perhaps I'd say banking, or I think there are some other industries that have a lot more masculine energy in them. My experience of tech is that it's generally quite a delighted when there's women involved. I haven't experienced it myself. I imagine it must be there, but I think that there's been a lot of work to be done to make it a more inclusive space. And I think it has definitely made a difference. It may not be exactly equal now, but I don't know if either forcing equality is necessarily the goal.
And right now, I also think that sometimes some jobs are more natural for women, and some jobs, for example, like teacher, it's more natural maybe for us to have a teacher as a woman. And for some, as you said, financial banking or something like this, something that is connected with a high level of dealing with the finances, I think that it's more natural for us to see on this level men.
This is a whole other philosophical discussion that we can have. I think that if we assume that in all of us we have feminine and masculine energies, and we have, when I say the feminine and the masculine, by the feminine I mean the parts of all of us that are caring, nurturing, softer, more creative, and then the masculine energies in all of us are the ones that are more driving, more analytical, more aggressive. And I both have some masculine, some feminine energies. Men have the same as well. Generally, men have more masculine energies. Generally, women have more feminine energies, and professions that perhaps require more feminine energy and thus will attract more women. But again, this is a hotly discussed area. But that is that. You look around and you see it. When you go to a hospital, you do see that it is a majority of the carers, the nurses, women. When you go to a construction site, you see that the people that are having to exert physical strength tend to be more masculine.
Yeah.
And then there are marks about things in the middle. So, something like technical coding and engineering and technical jobs, there is the need for both masculine and feminine energies in all of those professions. You can't be a great developer if you don't understand human design and human requirements. Like the really great engineers are the ones that have a good feminine energy, but you also need skill and energy to be able to do the logical deduction and the structuring of your code. So you need both. But it has drawn people of more masculine energies to it. But that being said, especially now, and I think especially with the rise now of AI, which will increasingly automate aspects of engineering, there will be a greater requirement for the softer, more feminine energies, the, understanding what a human needs, design it well, understanding how to talk about it and market it effectively. So perhaps we'll see a shift and we'll see, going into technical jobs because they're the ones that will be harder to replace with AI.
I like your point of view. It's very interesting about the energies. I haven't heard about this and haven't heard about such point of view. So it's very interesting. Thank you. My last question. You say that the best role model for female leaders is Buffy, the vampire slayer. And I just wanted to ask just a fun question. What women in tech can learn from her?
I did actually I've done many a talk on this subject. I do actually think that. So for those who have not been lucky enough to watch all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it is not just a silly show about a teenage blonde cheerleader who kills vampires. Actually a metaphor. And I think it's a great metaphor for female leadership because she, the whole concept of Buffy is that she is the first of all the slayers, which is, there's one at any point in time, but she's the first of the slayers that delegated well and was able to have friends around her that she could lean on and work with. Mm-hmm. And as a result, was the greatest slayer of all time because she knew how to be a great leader. She knew how to get people on, committed to her cause. She was able to motivate. She was able to delegate. She knew she couldn't do it all on her own. And so she surrounded herself with people that mitigated her weaknesses and augmented her strengths. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's in that for all leaders, but I think she particularly showed a brand or a type of female leadership that I think should be celebrated more. She never lost her femininity, but she was a very strong, and I think that it's really inspiring to see examples of how you can mix these two together.
And right now we have just a quick flash questions game. I will ask a question with two options, and you will need to choose the one that is the closest to you. So Sydney or London?
London, because it's where I've lived for the majority of my adult life.
Okay, great. 2007 or 2020?
2020. It's old.
Why? We haven't experienced the lockdown yet in 2007.
Yeah, but 2020 it was a good year for me personally. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, so working or teaching?
Ooh, working for me.
Okay, pre-planned or on the spot?
On the spot for me.
One more dog or one more startup?
One more dog.
It's not so stressful, right?
Exactly. No, I think this is my last one.
Great. So, Alicia, we are done with the podcast right now. We have covered all the questions. Unfortunately, due to some obstacles, but we have already them covered and everything is okay. So we have eventually this session and we have recorded the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you're extremely busy, but I appreciate your readiness to jump on a podcast and share your experience. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This is one of the most well-researched and well-constructed interviews. So thank you so much for being the recipient of your great questions.
Thanks for joining and thanks for watching our episode on building digital products. Please make sure that you are subscribed and turn the thumbs up.